Paul went living as he arrived in Rome after having been judged by the emperor and receiving his house arrest sentence, so he had to live under control. He went living in an area of the city of Rome that was called Regula. Regula literally means in Latin meter, you know, the system to calculate the dimension, regula. And the district Regula was nearby the river. We have to use our imagination, as we were saying, because today, or better, since 1870, since when Rome became the capital of Italy, we built banks around the river in order to avoid the floods. The reason is that for 1600 years the river of the city have been on the same level since when Roman Empire fell and nobody was taking care anymore about the channels built by the old Romans to calm down the floods. Rome was every 2 or 3 years completely buried underground by the sediments carried by the river. So the areas nearby the river were dangerous, were poor, and were actually the areas dedicated to the most humble parts of society. The area of Regula, at the time of the old Romans, was the suburb of the city. It was a district where 90% of people were Jewish. Why Jewish? Not only because Jewish were living all together as they like, living all together, as today, if you go in the city, you have the Chinese district, the Indian district, because people like living together, but also because Jewish, here in Rome, were mostly taking care about sails and curtains. So they were sail makers and curtain makers. And regula, the meter, was the system they used to measure the materials, the fabric they needed to make the sails and the curtains. And in order to test your sails, nothing better than living nearby the river. Today, you will not see the river lower level than the city is higher level than the river, but when Paul was living down there, he was on the same level of the river, and that's why you will notice entering inside that we will have to go downstairs few steps in order to enter the old room of Paul. In the meantime, you can see that we are driving in the original city center of Rome. You saw big roads, but in Rome there weren't big roads all along Middle Age. Everything was like this. The reason is very easy. Rome has been invaded plenty of time, and if you have invaders in your city, much safer if they don't see what's behind the corner. And for this reason, all the urban net of the old city center of Rome is like this, narrow alleys where you don't know what's behind the corner. Now, the area where we are in this moment is not called anymore Regula, but it's called Campitelli. So it's another district of Rome, but it's built on top of the old district where Paul was living. We are going to stop in front of a church, the church of Saint Paul alla Regola, Saint Paul in Regula district, that we also call San Paolino, the small Saint Paul. Why? Because here in Rome we have also the Basilica of Saint Paul that we are visiting later on. Huge basilica, the second biggest of Rome after Saint Peter, and for this reason, as that one is Saint Paul, this one is San Paolino, the small Saint Paul. The church of Saint Paul alla Regola is a church that has a very ancient history. Imagine that since when the Emperor Constantine converted, they had a titulus down there. Titulus doesn't properly mean church. It means it was a place where they honored the name of Paul as Paul was passing down there. We have to think that the conversion of Constantine was in 313. Paul died in 64 after Jesus, so he was already an historical character. He died 250 years before. This church has always been existent, but at the beginning it wasn't dedicated to Saint Paul. It was dedicated to Saint Caesarius, who was actually another martyr. Later on, in the 13th century, reconstructed with the not only with history, but more than all with bibliographic research, reconstructing that in that place there was the district and probably the room where Paul was living, they dedicated this church to Saint Paul in Regula district. Now guys, we are stopping here for a while and we need to wait for a few minutes before then entering inside.